Then let's talk through microphone specs. This will be very brief. I'm not going too into depth. If you're watching on YouTube, I have thrown up on the screen the U87AI spec sheet. Not all of the specs, but the typical specs that you see on a microphone spec sheet. Polar pattern. That tells you what area around the microphone is going to be picking up audio the best, as well as the worst, what area around the microphone you can use to reject the most noise. Cardioid means you're picking up audio in front of the microphone. The rear rejects the most audio. Omnidirectional means it picks up audio relatively equally all the way around the microphone. Figure 8 means it picks up audio well in the front and the rear of the microphone, and then the sides of the mic are completely dead and reject the most audio. Then you have frequency range or frequency response. This tells you what frequencies the microphone will actually pick up. 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz is the standard human hearing range. As people age, they lose a lot of the top end. But in order to get a basic understanding of the tone of the microphone, you do need to look at the frequency response graph, and that will tell you what frequencies, what sounds are going to be louder, what sounds are going to be more quiet or it's really difficult to explain that. I have a video on Podcastage about frequency response or frequency range, something like that. It's very old, but check it out. Then you have sensitivity. That tells you how loud a microphone's output is, how loud the microphone is, which ultimately leads to how high you're going to have to crank your microphone preamp. And negative 60 dB is classified as quiet. That is what the SM7B's output is. And negative 30 dB is quite loud. That's going to be a pretty loud condenser microphone. So between negative 60 and negative 30 dB is where you'll see the majority of microphones. The Aston Element, the Aston Stealth, is one of the rare cases where I saw something louder than negative 30 dB. And when you engaged the mic preamp inside of the Stealth, you were getting around negative 16 dB in terms of sensitivity. There are some preamps where you won't be able to use it with that because it would be too loud and you would be distorting the preamp even if the preamp was turned all the way down. Crazy loud. Then we have rated impedance. This tells you the impedance of the microphone. All you need to know is the typical range will be from 60 to about 200, and the higher the impedance, that will increase the noise that is generated by your microphone's preamp. The lower the impedance, the lower the noise generated by your preamp will be. If you have a 60 ohm microphone, that's going to be good. The preamp noise is going to be relatively minimal. If you have a microphone that has an impedance of 500 ohms, the noise generated by the preamp will be significantly louder. On the note of the preamp, load impedance is the minimum recommended impedance of your preamp. This is typically going to be 5x or sometimes 10x your microphone's preamp. So if you have a microphone with an impedance of 60 ohms, you may see a load impedance of 600 ohms or 1,000 ohms. And many preamps are 2,500, 2,000 ohms and up. They will work with the majority of microphones very well. Then we have equivalent noise level or self noise, and this tells you how loud the electronics inside of the microphone are. This is a spec that is only really represented on condenser microphones, not dynamic. I'm stupid. It's on condenser microphones because they actually have amplifiers inside of them. A good figure here would be below 16 dBA, and anything above 16 dBA, you're starting to get into some murky territory. I would say around 20 dBA is when it becomes pretty bad. If you can get below 10 dBA, you're in good health. You're in good company. Really quiet microphone that's not going to cause you any problems there. Then we have max SPL. This tells you how loud of a sound source a microphone can handle before it actually distorts. A good figure here is 130 dB, 140 dB. 150 dB is bonkers. To give you some context, Rustling leaves would be 10 decibels, background noise in the suburbs 35, soft music 55, a vacuum cleaner is 80 dB, a large orchestra is 98 dB, iPod at max level 100, noisy nightclub 110 dB, military jet taking off 130 dB. If you are miking up a jet engine taking off, you will have to pay attention to the max SPL of a microphone. For the majority of us singing or doing podcasting, it's not going to come into play very much. The U87AI is 127 dB. The U67 is 117 dB. I'm not going to get loud enough to distort that with a guitar cab because I don't play very loud, or with my voice. There's some context for you. And lastly, supply voltage. That's how much power a microphone requires to function. This is only going to be pertinent on condenser microphones, or there are, in rare instances, active dynamic microphones. It'll tell you if it needs phantom power or not. If it needs phantom power, typically that means 48 volts. There are rare instances where a microphone may need 11 to 24 volts. That's a bit rare, but that is a thing, and it should not be damaged if you do give that mic 48 volts.